Hello, and welcome back to Burning Bones, the outward run where I have no armor and can deal only fire damage. Due to time constraints in the last episode, I paused halfway through completing the first quest for the Holy Mission, so let's begin with finishing that. Or, that's what I would like to say, but I got to 49% corruption in the last episode and didn't want to risk the possibility of getting 75% corruption and dealing with the constantly spawning corrupted spirit. God knows I couldn't handle the impediment of having to one-shot a weak enemy every 5 minutes. Thus, since the alchemy merchant in the tower wasn't selling any corruption-reducing potions, I spent 20 minutes trekking to Cierzo and buying the potions there before heading all the way back to the corrupted tombs. Spending 20 minutes to avoid a cumulative 1-minute hindrance seems like a good trade to me. Finally back on track with the quest after 2 long detours, I head into the cave and encounter a third. This skeleton, Myriad, wants me to run around the entire area looking for his lost body parts to assemble him back together. If I do so, he'll open up the gate and give me some food as a result. Honestly, I did not need to do this quest. If I so desired, I could have simply stomped his skull in, which would immediately open up the gate. But the thought of doing such a vile act to one of my bony brethren was too much to bear. As such, I spend another 5 minutes fetching his various limbs across the cavern. After making him as whole as a skeleton can be, he said some pseudo-satanic stuff before peacing out, leaving 2 servings of a seafood dish and its recipe behind. I don't know whether to be more concerned about the incantation or where he got the seafood dish after supposedly spending several years alone in this cave dismembered. Once over my internal strife, I head over to where Oliel was and begin the final part of this first quest. Past the previously blocked doorway, Oliel is attempting to quell the corruption in the area by cleansing its source, a malignant tumor growing from what was once an altar. The task proves to be too dangerous, however, and an explosion occurs, summoning the entirety of Overwatch 2's player base and taking Oliel's arms. After dismissing the symbolic representations of my social life, I return to aid Oliel and, more importantly, finish the quest and escape this previously godforsaken place. In a beam of light, Alat uses his heavenly powers to heal Oliel and give her glowing prosthetic arms. Some angelic appendages, if you will. You know, some divine digits. Perhaps even some godly grabbers. Despite the added holy hooks, Olia was distraught at the outcome, shaken by her brush with death. She confirms that the place is clear and then heads back to Monsoon, a seed of doubt and Alat planted within her heart. Due to my thinly veiled abandonment issues, I am not one to be left behind. As such, I run back to Monsoon and turn in the quest, getting an option to either get a blessing from Alat or give said blessing to Oliel. Obviously, the game wants you to be a hero and relinquish the blessing, sacrificing yourself for the less fortunate. However, doing so only gives your character weak items that I can't even use, instead of a powerful passive to boost my tankiness. So that, and the sad truth that I was born with the chronic inability to not be a selfish asshole, led me to keep the passive. Purified. This passive increases my decay resistance by 20%, very helpful for completing all of these early quests as most of the enemies deal some amount of decay damage. Finally done with the first Holy Mission quest, I take the mandatory 3-day rest before starting the second quest, Doubts and Secrets, and heading out. Doubts and Secrets required me to go to Berg, but on my way there I decided that I should try to finish the parallel quest for the Holy Mission and the Heroic Kingdom for the various rewards they provide. Completing the Holy Mission parallel quest will trivialize a later mission and is thus the most important one to finish. It requires me to collect 4 notes from within the Deadroot's tree, a large vertical dungeon with an impressive volume of weak enemies and a few strong ones sprinkled in. The biggest danger within this dungeon is the open pits. Falling down one of these will likely cause a small case of instant death. It should be easy to avoid them, but with my general buffoonery and lacking skill, nothing is impossible. That said, my character is quite strong now, so I easily burned through the waves of weak enemies that came to confront me. The hardest challenge was an Immaculate hiding within a secret alcove obscured by bushes. The fight against it was intense, but once it was defeated, the rest of the dungeon was conquered quickly, only stumbling a bit in the middle portion when I ate 2 hits at the same time. Thankfully, with the extra 40 HP grabbed in the last episode, I didn't die and was able to heal up. allowing me to finish off those enemies and complete the dungeon fully. Finally done with the first part of this quest, I talked to some people and they told me the next part of my mission would have to be completed in Berg. Thus, I walked to Enmakar Forest to finish Purifier, continue Doubts and Secrets, and start the last parallel quest, Blood Under the Sun. Purifier and Doubts and Secrets required me to undertake what might be the most foreboding trial of this run: social interaction. Quite literally, the only requirements left for the parallel and main quest lines is to talk to people. How horrifying. There are some optional, more violent objectives the mission provides that I'll use to blow off some steam once I'm done here. In Berg, I talk to Oliel and find out that there has been an attack on its council room, inciting a war between the Blue Chamber Collective and the Heroic Kingdom. She heads off to Monsoon to inform them of the oncoming violence that very well could destabilize human civilization, whilst I begin a much more important endeavor: shopping. I bought some spells I previously forgot about and a book that lets me cast them. The spells are Dez and Egoth. Together they give me a slight buff to my physical resistances. A small improvement, sure, but when playing with possible permadeath, any buff is welcome. All my running around and preparing in Berg done, I venture out to work on the second parallel quest. Blood Under the Sun requires me to collect clues about a murderous plot within Levant to overthrow the current monarchy. The first step is to raid a nearby bandit encampment next to a giant, ever-burning tree. Honestly, I know this is some fantasy mystical tree thingy, but just looking at it, I have to wonder how this world hasn't yet succumbed to global warming. Like, this thing has to produce a massive amount of carbon dioxide, and it's been burning for presumably forever. There's no real lore surrounding it either, so there's no explanation as to why this thing hasn't destroyed the world yet. That existential tangent aside, I head over to the hideout and grab the note. While here, I free two important NPCs from other questlines, Risa and Kurwak, collecting the rewards they provide, one of which, the Writ of Tribal Favor, will come in handy later down the line. On my way out, I make sure to collect two important items: a sulfuric mushroom and an obsidian shard. The sulfuric mushroom is an important component of creating an oil bomb, which can be later improved into a blazing bomb. These are incredibly important items for later in the run, as they can apply various important fire debuffs from a distance, whilst also just dealing a lot of damage. The obsidian shard is important for creating a new tent for me to use, which will improve my fire damage by a bit. The problem with getting an obsidian shard though is that it mainly drops from burning men, obsidian elementals, and scarlet emissaries. All three are from a subtype of enemies called fire elementals, which are completely immune to fire and the burning condition. The only way I can fight them is by inflicting the scorched debuff, which allows me to deal 25% of my typical damage to them. Long story short, these guys suck to fight, and I'll have to get good at fighting them as they become very common later in the game. After harvesting the mushrooms and looting the doubly burned corpse, I make a slight detour to the hives to complete the optional section of the faction quest. To complete the optional section, I just have to beat up some walking hornets' nests and find a guy who's gone missing. A very easy objective that I nonetheless mess up. First, I go the wrong way and end up in an area with two enemies. The area was quite literally labeled Hive Trap, so I don't know what I was thinking going in here. After getting my ass thoroughly handed to me, I finally realized my mistake and headed in the right direction. My triumph is short-lived though, as I confidently saunter into the correct place only to get flattened by a single enemy this time. After two of the most harrowing fights in this run, I find the man I've been searching for. He then immediately dies. All that suffering and nothing to show for it. Battered and bruised, I head back to Berg for a small rest before heading to Levant to finally finish Blood Under the Sun. On the way to Levant, I head into another hive, almost die again, and grab the second note for this quest. Thankfully, I don't think I'll have to fight these wooden menaces anymore, but I'll definitely look into some therapy afterwards for the abuse. I then complete my journey to Levant, dig up the last note in some trash, and give it to the head of security in Levant, Cyrene. She looks at the notes, realizes there's a regicidal plot, and asks for my help to flush it out. Since I am everybody's errand boy, I of course agree to help and am sent to the Undercity. Before apprehending the perpetrator, I make a detour to tie up some loose ends. To the left of where we enter the Undercity is Baron Montgomery, a sick individual who preys upon the weak to grow his fortune. He is a cancerous blight upon the world that should be snuffed out. Thankfully, we have the chance to do just that. That said, his money is good and I am poor, so I let him go. Finally done with all the running around, I meet with Cyrene and apprehend the mastermind. With the evidence and the culprit, I show my findings to the Queen of Levant, finishing Blood Under the Sun and getting me a substantial reward. My business concluded in Levant, I scurry through desert, forest, and swamp to get back to Monsoon. Here I learn that Oliel, with her new fluorescent forearms, casually broke an older disciple's neck in self-defense, like a master martial artist who's also an amateur chiropractor. Since I can't complete the quest with her captive, I decide to negotiate with the head of security, Lockwell. Taking a page from Baron Montgomery, I first try bribery, but I'm too poor for that, so I use my god to threaten him instead. You know, like a good priest would. This works, and Oliel is freed. The experience disturbed her though, and she decides to head out on her own and contemplate her faith. I really didn't care, so I blew her off and instead turned in my quests. Specifically, I turned in Purifier and Doubts and Secrets. The reward for Purifier is not readily apparent, but Doubts and Secrets immediately gives me Divine Assistance, which decreases my mana and stamina consumption. This passive provides a nice improvement to my sustained combat abilities. A bit stronger than before, I look to continue speeding through the faction questline and hopefully beat the base game story, but that will have to wait for the next episode.
Thank you for watching all the way through. If you liked the video, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe so you can get an alert when I make the next part. Whether you do or you don't though, I hope you have a good day.